Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Happy to see you once again. And we are starting with lecture 8 of drama 2, that is modern drama. I'm quite positive that you'll be understanding the drama because almost now we are finishing up our very first text of the modern drama, that is The Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. And today we'll move on with the thought-provoking aspects that we started in our last lecture and talked about a couple of them. Today we'll talk about two more aspects. One that talks about characters' development during the play, and particularly I will be discussing female characters with you, and will expect that you are, in the light of that discussion, you will be able to draw those developmental flow charts for the male characters. Then the second thing I'll discuss will be Ibsen's Doll's House is another representation of the social lie and duty, Ibsen's favorite subject. Okay, so let us start with today's talk. Do we find characters' development during the play? Here we are discussing life experience versus characters' growth, or how life experiences shape and form personalities. The second aspect of discussion is there any difference between characters' appearances in the beginning and their reality perceived in the end? So appearance versus reality. One thing that I would like to mention here is that both of these themes will not be discussed separately, although they stand as separate themes, but we will be discussing them in relation to each other because they are interconnected. And if you will not bring both of them, you will not let them coincide, you will not be able to get that depth out of it. So we will be discussing them, however, simultaneously. Feminine representation of development. I will discuss Nora's and Mrs. Lind's development with you. Nora, by the end of Act, we see, by the end of Act 3, Nora has entered a new phase of her life. Similarly, by the end of Act 3, Mrs. Lind has entered a new phase of her life too. So, there is a development, there is a parallel change going on in Nora's and Mrs. Lind's life. We will see dependence versus independence characteristic of their lives. Despite their apparent opposition, definitely appearance and dependence and independence are terms which are opposite to each other. Despite their apparent opposition, both Nora's and Mrs. Lind's decisions allow them to fulfill their respective personal desire. Now, they have both chosen their own fates freely and without any male dominance. No male helped in letting them decide for themselves. They decided whatever they wanted to decide. If you see one of the characters, she likes having people depend on her. Can you guess who is that character? Is this Nora or Mrs. Lind? And the other character would like to have an independent life. So, who is this character? She likes having people depend on her, and independence does not seem to fulfill her wish. This is Mrs. Lind. She's the one who kept good care of her sick mother. She's the one who fulfilled her responsibility towards her younger brothers. She's the one who refused Krogstad in the beginning, before the play started, to marry him because she had to marry a wealthier and richer man in order to support her family. Now, she is the one who basically again sacrifices her liberty and is ready to take care of Krogstad's children and be his wife again. So we see that Nora is a character who moves from independence to dependence, and Mrs. Lind is a character who moves vice versa in opposite direction from independence to dependence, because that's how she likes. Nora has chosen to abandon her children and her husband because she wants independence from her roles as mother and wife. This is what is very apparent in the text. However, Mrs. Lind, in contrast, she has chosen to abandon her independence to marry Crockstead and take care of his family. Now, Ibsen seems to feel that the nature of their choices of both of these women is not as important as the fact that both women make their choice independently. So on one hand, what we are being shown that there is a development of change, and there is push and pull, back and forth movement between women's choice of dependence and independence. Some of them are inherently by nature would like to be a source of independence, and some of them would want vice versa. And on the other end, what Ibsen wants to draw our attention to is that these choices are freely made by these women. However, the male characters were involved in directing and pushing and pulling the strings. To let them move in some particular direction, they were not directly involved in making these decisions. Now it's a thinking call for you students. Do you find any development of the male characters? And here I am referring to Torvald and Krogstad. If you find there has been any development, no matter whether it's positive, no matter whether it's negative, or of any third kind, I would want you to draw your development flow chart and write those evidences which let you understand that change has come here, no matter what kind of change, and then you draw this development chart of both of these characters. All right. The second aspect that we would like to discuss in today's talk is the social lie and duty. Again, it's joining of both of these themes together that will help us understand the significance of this representation of society. What is social lie? Is it a lie, or is it better than lie, or is it a kind of super lie? What kind of lie is this? Is it a positive phenomenon or a negative phenomenon? And what relevance it keeps with duty? And if it comes in relation with duty, is it socially acceptable, or it should be the person should be penalized for the lie? Okay, move on and see. Do you think Ibsen's Doll's House is another return to his favorite subject, the social lie and duty? Do we find any relation between both? Okay. The social lie and duty. In A Doll's House, Ibsen returns to the subject so vital to him, the social lie and duty, this time as manifesting themselves in the sacred institution of the home and in the position of women in her gilded cage. She would like to discuss this theme, although Ibsen would like to discuss this theme, although he had been discussing this in other plays written by him. Here he would like to attach this theme with the role of women in society in collaboration with feministic approach. Feminism, household and the position of women. Nora is the beloved, adored wife of Torvald Helmer. That is what we understand by now. He is an admirable man. Who is an admirable man? Torvald in the beginning is a kind of very admirable man, rigidly honest, of high morals, of high ideas, and passionately devoted to his wife and children. All right. In short, a good man and an enviable husband. Any woman would like to have a husband like that. Almost every mother would be proud of such a match for her daughter, and the later would consider himself fortunate to become the wife of such an accomplished man. So, Nora too considers herself quite a fortunate woman. Indeed, she worships her husband, believes in him implicitly, and is sure that if ever her safety should be menaced, Torvald, her idol, her god, would perform the miracle and would come and would become her knight and would save her. When a woman loves as Nora does, nothing else matters, least of all social, legal, or moral considerations. Now, one needs to think about women of love of such women. If she is so deeply in love with a man of all the desirable characteristics of his personality, will she consider these social, legal, and moral considerations, restrictions, before doing an act that can save her love and that can save him from any kind of problem? Therefore, when her husband's life is threatened, it is no effort, it is joy for Nora to forge her father's name to a note and borrow 800 this currency, Norwegian currency, kronen, on it in order to take her sick husband to Italy. So instead, if we are thinking this as a crime that she forged her father's signatures, in fact this was a matter of joy, rather pride for Nora, who can save her husband's life by doing this act. So what is the sense of women's duty here that we are observing? In her eagerness to serve her husband, and in perfect innocence of the legal aspect of her act, she does not give the matter much thought, because she thinks this is what she needs to do, except for her anxiety to shield him from any emergency that may call upon him to perform the miracle in her behalf. She works hard and saves every penny of her pin money to pay back the amount she borrowed on the forged check. We need to go back and we need to discuss a few things again. If you remember and you can recall in the last lecture, what we discussed Nora's character for her want of money, for being spendthrift, for being a shopping lover woman. That's how Torvald perceives her. However, she is the one who borrows money to save her husband's life, and she is the one who keeps up saving money in order to repay the debt. So, how far we are able to justify her character as a spendthrift shopping lover woman, and how far we are able to see her as a kind of woman who is indulged into a lie that basically stems out of her social, personal, and domestic responsibilities. Moving on. So a woman who is deeply in love with the man, who is wife of the man, who is children of this very person, and the person gets into a trouble. What kind of goal a woman can set for herself? Nora's light-hearted and gay. She's a happy person, apparently without depth. We find her a very clear self, who's very transparent, who's very innocent and childlike, who indeed would expect depth of a doll, a squirrel, a songbird. So, do you see a clash here between the appearance and reality? Apparently, And not only apparently, the way even Torvald perceives Nora is a kind of childlike person who does not keep any debt, who is not wise, who is very foolish. So who would expect depth of a doll, a squirrel, a songbird? Her purpose in life is to be happy for her husband's sake, for the sake of the children, to sing, dance and play with them. Okay, so that's the ultimate goal of a woman. And this brings a woman to stand at a point where she is torn between two very forceful desires. One desire is wanting to be as her loved ones want her to be, her husband would want her to be, her children would want her to see, towards against the desire of what she wants to be. It's a conflict of self. So besides, is she not shielded, protected and cared for? Who then would suspect Nora of depth? But already in the opening scene, when Torvald inquires what his precious squirrel wants for a Christmas present, Nora quickly asks him for money. Well, apparently, Torvald sees this desire. Okay, as expected. You want money, of course, for shopping. But what do you think? Why would Nora want money here? Is it to buy macarons or finery? In a talk with Mrs. Lynde, Nora reveals her inner self and forecasts the inevitable deblaque of her doll's house. So from this point, the development of the conflict is speeded. After telling her friend how she had saved her husband, Nora says, "When Torvald gave me money for clothes and so on, I never used more than half of it. I always bought the simplest thing. Torvald never noticed anything." So, do you see what is happening here? Nora would always want more and more money to buy things. But what she does in there, she does not buy them. She always would buy cheap and simplest things and would save money. And this is how she has been saving money to repay the debt. If you remember when she brings toys for her children, that's how she mentioned wonderful toys and so cheap. But it was often very hard. Christina dear, for it's nice to be beautifully dressed now, isn't it? Well, and besides that, I made money in other ways. Last winter, I was so lucky. I got a heap of copying to do. I shut myself up every evening and wrote for far into the night. Oh, sometimes I was so tired. And yet it was splendid to work in that way and earn money. I almost felt as if I was a man. So, although earning money gave Nora enough pleasure, gave Nora the sense that she is able to achieve her target, but what is her target? Is her target to earn a lot of money for her own sake, for her pleasure, or to repay the debt? Again, the social lie, the social crime that Nora commits, where from it comes in, what kind of sense of duty makes her to do it? Moving on. Deep down in the consciousness of Nora, there evidently slumbers personality and character. That is not very much like what she pretends to be, which could come into full bloom only through a great shock, great miracle, great happening. Not the kind Nora hopes for, but a miracle just the same, where her husband challenges her beliefs, her belief that her husband loves her and he can do anything for her. He can be her savior, he can be her lifeguard. Nora had borrowed the money from Nils Krogstad, a man with a shady past in the eyes of the community. and of the righteous moralist Torvald Helmer. Now, Nora shows her courage and shows the gives us the impression that she does not care for anything whatsoever when it is matter of saving her husband's life. Even she can go to an evil person, and a person evil to the extent that community does not like him very much, not even her own husband. However, she is willing to deal with him for the reason if she can see him a potential person to help her out in the time of need. So long as Croxted is allowed the little breathing space a Christian people grants to him who has once broken its laws, he is reasonably human. He does not molest Nora, but when Helmer becomes director of the bank in which Croxted is employed and threatens the man with dismissal, Croxted naturally fights back. For as he says to Nora, "If need be, I shall fight as though for my life to keep my little place in the bank. It's not only for the money that matters least to me. It's something else. But I would better make a clean breast of it." So that's how he thinks about it, and he says that it is wrong what Torvald is doing to me. And it's not only money and only my space in the bank, it is more than that. Because he does not find himself falling into a category that can be called or known or respected as criminal. So the conflict is developing and developing. Of course, you know, like everyone else, that some years ago I got into trouble. The matter never came into court, but from that moment all paths were barred to me. Then I took up the business you know about. I was obliged to grasp at something, and I don't think I have been one of the worst, but now I must clear out of it all. So he says that he wants to clear up himself. He wants to clear up all the barred ways that he had been facing all his life. And this is he thinks if he accepts the kind of behavior what Torvald is planning to do with him, this will stamp him as a kind of character, as a kind of person who cannot work at a respectable place. So it's not a matter of money, it's not a matter of his job, it's a matter of his respect that he wants to keep up with. My sons are growing up. For their sake, I must try to win back as much respectability as I can. Respectability is a concern for him. This place in the bank was the first step, and now your husband wants to kick me off the ladder, back into the mire. So that's how he is being bothered. Mrs. Helmer, you evidently have no idea what you have really done. But I can assure you that it was nothing more and nothing worse than made me an outcast from society. Here, Croxted is referring to the criminal act that both of them have committed in their own lives. Croxted by doing one thing, and Nora by doing loaning, by forging her father's signature. Both are criminals. However, Croxted is sharing her feelings for Nora, her status, and her act. Although he respects her act as a very noble act, however, he says that, you know, that I will become an outcast from society if I would do it. But this I may tell you, that if I am flung into the gutter a second time, you shall keep me company. So, if I will die, I won't let you live either. And I think it's quite fair enough. When you are dying and you know that you are dying because of somebody and you are being stepped back and you are being pushed back, then I think everyone will stand up for his or her right. What do you think? Even when Nora is confronted with this awful threat, she does not fear for herself, only for Torvald. So good, so true, who has such an aversion to debts, but who loves her so devotedly that for her sake he would take the blame upon himself. See how Nora is thinking. When all this is what is said by Crockstead is there, and he tells her that if you do not listen to me, if you do not help me in saving my position, I will not die alone this time. And at the same time, what Nora is thinking, oh, my poor husband, for my sake, he may take the blame upon himself. But this must never be. Nora too begins a fight for life, for her husband's life and that of her children. That's her motivation. Did not Helmer tell her that the very presence of a criminal like Crockstead poisons the children? And is she not a criminal? Okay. Torvald Helmer assures her in his male conceit that early corruption generally comes from the mother's side. But of course, the father's influence may act in the same way. Now, what Nora is thinking for her husband, what kind of pedestal that she is keeping him on and worshipping him, and now when the truth is revealed, how Torvald comes back to her, telling her that it's not only Nora who is criminal, who is to be blamed, it's also her mother, it's also her father, and the same is going to be with their children as well. And this Crockstead has been poisoning his own children for years past by a life of lies and hypocrisy. That's why I call him morally ruined. Okay, if that is how you think about Crockstead, what do you think about yourself? That's a question. So, the final nail in the coffin, I would call that, when the conflict reaches its peak, is when Nora's very strong, very passionate, very deeply rooted beliefs are challenged. Here, a woman is challenged. Her passion is challenged. All her life, she kept believing one thing, that her husband loves her. And as she saved his life in time of need, without even him knowing how did she do it and what she went through, he would come up and do even more. Poor Nora, who cannot understand why a daughter has no right to spare her dying father anxiety, or why a wife has no right to save her husband's life, is surely not aware of the true character of her idol. But gradually, the evil is lifted. At first, when in reply to her desperate pleading for Crockstead, her husband discloses the true reason for wanting to get rid of him. He says, the fact is, he was a college chum of mine. There was one of those rash friendships between us that one so often repents later. That's how her husband feels about Crockstead. I don't mind confessing it. He calls me by my Christian name. And he insists on doing it even when others are present. So, Torvald's good reputation in front of people, this idea is being challenged. That my employee, an employee on a lower position, he's calling me by name, by my Christian name, and calling me in front of people. So, you can see what is happening here. His ego is being challenged. He delights in putting on airs of familiarity. Torvald here, Torvald there. I assure you it's most painful to me. He would make my position at the bank perfectly unendurable. So, what is wrong that I cannot, being Torvald, keep Crockstead in is not that he's morally sick, is not that he is not a good man, is for the reason that he creates that air of familiarity with me. And that is not affordable, and that is not endurable. So, here his character is being portrayed in quite fine and transparent colors by Ibsen. And then again, when the final blow comes, the final blow of talk between both of these major characters, Nora and her husband, for 48 hours Nora battles for her ideal, never doubting Torvald for a moment. Indeed, so absolutely sure is she of her stock oak, her lord, her god, her passion, that she would rather kill herself than have him take the blame for her act. We see that towards the end, what Nora thinks of. She thinks of committing suicide because she is she is in horrible pain of realizing what if truth is revealed. Her husband will get into a very odd position and he may take blame on himself. He may get into jail, and Nora would not want it. How would she see her poor husband taking her blame upon himself? And the end comes, and with it the doll's house tumbles down. The doll's vision tumbles down. The beautiful Christmas tree, a symbol of decoration, gets D-shaped. And Nora discards her doll's dress, an impression of beauty, an impression of flirtatiousness. She sheds her skin, as it were. Torvald Helmer proves himself a petty Palestine, a bully and a coward, as so many good husbands when they throw off their respectable cloak. Well, that's a pity. That's quite a shock for a woman like this. Helmer's rage over. Nora's crime subsides the moment the danger of publicity is averted, providing that Helmer, like many a moralist, is not so much incensed at Nora's offense as by the fear of being found out. Not so Nora. Finding out is her salvation. It is then that she realizes how much she has been wronged. She has been exaggerated in her expectations, that she is only a plaything, a doll to Helmer. In her disillusionment, she says, "You have never loved me. You only thought it amusing to be in love with me." How sad. This is so sad. Now, we do have some dramatic references of the new developments, and this is how I would like you to collect references. These are the dialogues, and the very famous, literally celebrated moment of Ibsen's writing is the Nora's monologue. Helmer: "Why, Nora, what a thing to say." Nora: "Yes, it is so, Torvald. While I was at home with father, he used to tell me all his opinions, and I had the same opinions. If I had others, I concealed them because he would not have liked it. He used to call me his doll child and play with me as I played with my dolls. Then I came to live in your house. I passed from father's hands into yours. You settled everything according to your taste, and I got the same taste as you. Or I pretended to. I don't know which. Both ways, perhaps. When I look back on it now, I seem to have been living here like a beggar from hand to mouth. I lived by performing tricks for you. Torvald, but you would have it so. You and father have done me a great wrong. It's your fault that my life has been wasted. A woman, after spending more than half of her life, is coming to a realization, and this realization is quite a realization where you understand and realize that your life has been wasted doing things which keep no meaning. They do not add into anything around you, a meaningless life that you lived up till now. Helmer: "It's exasperating. Can you forsake your holiest duties in this way?" Nora: "What do you call my holiest duties?" Helmer: Do you ask me that? Your duties to your husband and children. Nora, I have other duties equal sacred. Helmer, impossible. What duties do you mean? Nora, my duties toward myself. So, this is the final moment when Nora is having this realization what has happened and why this has happened, where things went wrong. Helmer, before all else, you are a wife and a mother. So now blackmailing her for her social reasons. Nora, that I no longer believe. Because what she kept doing all her life is this very social duty that she has been performing. I think that before all else, I am a human being, just as much as you are. Or at least, I will try to become one. I know that most people agree with you, Torvald, and they say no in book. They say so in books. But henceforth, I can't be satisfied with what most people say and what is in books. I must think things out for myself and try to get clear about them. I had been living here these 8 years with a strange man and had borne him 3 children. Oh, I can't bear to think of it. I could tear myself to pieces. I can't spend the night in a strange man's house anymore. Is there anything more degrading to women than to live with a stranger and bear him children? Yet, the lie of the marriage institution decrees that she shall continue to do so. And the social conception of duty insists that for the sake of that lie, she needs to be nothing else than a plaything, a doll, a non-entity. So, you see how this social lie is being constituted? How Ibsen constructs a coordination between this reality of a social lie, a sense of duty, women's self, women's desire, and the desire of freedom. And how does he give new meanings to this desire of freedom? And here he says this new feministic movement started in its full bloom. And that is what Ibsen has been greatly criticized for. When Nora closes behind her the door of her doll's house, she opens wide the gate of her life for women and proclaims the revolutionary message that only perfect freedom and communion make a true bond between man and woman. Meeting in the open, without lies, without shame, free from the bondage of duty. Do not live with me because it's your duty. Or I shouldn't live with you because it's my duty. Let's live together under one roof because this is how it should be. So after analyzing these symbolic structures, we'll move on and almost finish our talk about the play by analyzing 5 major dialogues from the script. And this is the pattern I would want you to follow when you are analyzing these dialogues. So let's have a critical analysis of lexical symbolism that Ibsen has employed in his writings. This is a dialogue taken from Act 1, spoken by Nora. Nora says, "One day I might, yes, many years from now, when I've lost my looks a little, don't laugh. I mean, of course, a time will come when Torvald is not as devoted to me, not quite so happy when I dance for him and dress for him and play with him." What does this imply? Nora describes to Mrs. Lind the circumstances under which she would consider telling Torvald about the secret loan she took in order to save his life, because now she thinks that if she will tell Torvald now, he may lose his affection for her, his love for her. Although Nora do expect this kind of behavior, but in an age when she would lose her looks. So this let us understand Nora's understanding of their relation too, that Torvald likes her for her looks. Her claim that she might consider telling him when she gets older and loses her attractiveness is important because it shows that Nora has a sense of the true nature of her marriage. She knows the reality, even as early as Act 1. She recognizes that Torvald's affection is based largely on her appearance, and she knows that when her looks fade, when her actions are not that active and charming as dancing and singing, it is likely that Torvald's interest in her will fade as well. Her suggestion that in the future she may need something to hold over Torvald in order to retain his faithfulness and devotion to her reveals that Nora is not as naive as she pretends to be. She has an insightful, intelligent, and manipulative side that acknowledges, if only in a small way, the troubling reality of her existence. The second very important dialogue is Nora's dialogue with Mrs. Lind, and they both articulated, they both conversed, they both have this conversation in Act 1. Free. To be free, absolutely free. To spend time playing with the children, to have a clean, beautiful house, the way Torvald likes it. Can you recall where would she say this dialogue and what kind of frame of mind she is in and what is she's looking forward to? She's looking forward to a time when she's able to repay her debt. And to spend time playing with the children, we understand when we reach the end of the text, we get to know that she spends in time her doing things to collect more money so she can repay the debt. And with this tension on her mind and with the activities related to that tension, she's not able to give quality time to her family, quality time to her house the way she wants to give it and the way Torvald expects it from her, to have a clean, beautiful house. Nora claims that she will be free after the new year, after she has paid off her debt to Croxted. While describing her anticipated freedom, Nora highlights the very factors that constrain her. She claims that freedom will give her time to be a mother and a traditional wife who maintains a beautiful, clean, nice, shining house as her husband likes it. But the message of the play is that Nora cannot find true freedom in this traditional domestic realm. As the play continues, Nora becomes increasingly aware that she must change her life to find true freedom. And her understanding of the word free evolves accordingly. The understanding of freedom by Nora is different in the beginning, in Act 1. However, it changes entirely when we reach the Act 5. By the end of the play, she sees that freedom entails independence from societal constraints and the ability to explore her own personality, goals, and beliefs. Moving on to another very interesting dialogue. In this dialogue, Nora says to Mrs. Lind in Act 2, something glorious is going to happen. What can be the background of this dialogue and how can we analyze it? Nora speaks these prophetic sounding words to Mrs. Lind toward the end of Act 2 as he tells her about what will happen when Torvald reads Croxted's letter, detailing Nora's secret loan and forgery. The meaning of Nora's statement remains obscure until Act 3 when Nora reveals the nature of the glorious happening that she anticipates. She believes that, so we get to know that when she's anticipating the consequences, she is having an idea what can be potential consequences. She believes that when Torvald learns of the forgery and Croxted's blackmail, Torvald will take all the blame on himself and gloriously sacrifice his reputation in order to protect her. Nora's cherished dream. and this is what she's living with. When Torvald eventually indicates that he will not shoulder the blame for Nora, Nora's faith in him is shattered. In fact, Nora as a woman is shattered. Nora as a wife is shattered. Nora as an individual is shattered. Once the illusion of Torvald's nobility is crushed, Nora's other illusions about her married life are crushed as well. And her disappointment evolved into disillusionment, with Torvald triggers her awakening regarding this way of life, married life, she had been living. In another dialogue, Torvald says in Act 3, "From now on, forget happiness. Now it's just about saving the remains, the wreckage, the appearance." Even towards the end, you see that what Torvald is concerned about is about preserving appearance, preserving his reputation. Torvald speaks 3 words in Act 3 after learning of Nora's forgery and Crockstead's ability to expose her. Torvald's conversation with Nora have already made it clear that he's primarily attracted to Nora for her beauty, and that he takes personal pride in the good looks of his wife. He has also shown himself to be obsessed with appearing dignified and respectable to his colleagues. Torvald's reaction to Crockstead's letter solidifies his characterization as a shallow man, concerned more and first and foremost with appearances, nothing else. Here he states explicitly that the appearance of happiness is far more important to him than happiness itself. So the character is truly and completely revealed. These words are important also because they constitute Torvald's actual reaction to Nora's crime, in contrast to the gallant reaction that she expects. Rather than sacrifice his own reputation for Nora's, Torvald seeks to ensure that his reputation remains undestroyed. His desire to hide rather than to take responsibility for Nora's forgery proves Torvald to be the opposite of the strong, noble man that he had been envisioned, he had been perceived by Nora and society. So why am I analyzing these dialogues for you? Because this is how I want you to think about dialogues and their possible actions, these possible actions and reactions, so you can embed them as references to substantiate your understanding when you are composing your understanding of different themes presented in the drama. I'll go for one more. I have been performing tricks for you, Torvald. That's how I have survived. You wanted it like that. You and Papa have done me a great wrong. It's because of you I have made nothing of my life. Act 3, Nora's monologue. In fact, Nora's conversing with Torvald. And how do we see this dialogue? Nora speaks these words which express the truth that she has gleaned about her marriage, Torvald's character and her life in general, to Torvald at the end of Act 3. She recognizes that her life has been largely a performance. She has acted the part of the happy, childlike, innocent wife for Torvald, and before that she acted the part of the happy, childlike daughter for her father. So it's a kind of heavy realization that the protagonist is having over here. She now sees that her father and Torvald compelled her to behave in a certain way, and understands it to be a great wrong that her family did to her, including her father as well as her husband, and developed her into a being who, wantedly or unwantedly, lived a dependent's life. She has made nothing of her life because she has existed only to please men, initially her father and then her husband. Following this realization, Nora leaves Torvald in order to make something of her life, and for the first time to exist as a person independent of other people. So that was all that we get to know by the end of the talk, lecture 8. So let us have a very quick review of what we did today, what we talked about today. We touched upon those thought-provoking aspects that Ibsen implicitly or explicitly presents in his work. We understood the characters' development, especially the female characters' development during the play, and we discussed Nora and Mrs. Lind for that sake. And I would expect from you to analyze Torvald's and Krogstad's character in the same way. Then we talked about Ibsen's Doll's House, a presentation of Ibsen's favorite subject, where he discusses social lie and duty in close relevance with feminism. And we also discussed some of the dialogues from the play to have the flavor of this critical analysis of lexical use of symbols. How would Ibsen use different structures and sentences to create separate, different kind of meanings out of the text? And I would want you to analyze the dialogues in the same way while you are using them into your compositions, into your discussion while discussing different themes, to put them in between your text and then discuss and base your discussion on it while you are favoring and supporting some particular kind of viewpoint. In our next lecture, it will be a conclusive lecture on our very first text, The Doll's House by Henrik Ibsen. We will just touch upon the dramatic structure of The Doll's House once again. I will give you a conclusive talk on the play, and we will move on with the second play that is going to be Juno and the Peacock by Sean O'Casey, and in this lecture, in the lecture 9, we will have an introductory talk based on the play as well. We will try to touch upon writer's life, his work, and the social significance that he presents through his writing. By then, Allah Hafiz.